In the sleepy town of Willow Creek, Nebraska, where cornfields stretched like golden oceans under the endless Midwest sky, strange things didn't happen often. Folks there prided themselves on knowing everyone's business. Who was baking pies for the church potluck, whose kid was skipping school, or which farmer was feuding over fence lines. So, when Dr. Elias Harper, the town's only dentist for the past 20 years, opened his clinic doors one crisp autumn morning in 2018, he didn't expect the couple who strolled in like they owned the place. The husband and wife were a sight, dressed in those absurdly long white coats that dragged on the sidewalk, embroidered with dentist in bold red letters on the pocket. They looked like they'd stepped out of some old vaudeville act. But there was something polished about them. Too polished for Willow Creek. The wife, a woman in her mid-30s with fiery red hair tied up in a messy bun and lips painted with a daring scarlet, carried her opaque toolbox with a confident sway. Her husband, tall and lanky with a mustache that curled at the ends, lugged his own box, grinning like he just won the lottery. The waiting room was buzzing as usual. Mrs. Jenkins nursed a toothache in the corner, flipping through a dog-eared magazine, while young Tommy Ellis fidgeted next to his mom, dreading his cavity fill. Elias, a widower in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a sensible button-down shirt tucked into khakis, glanced up from his reception desk. His receptionist, Betty, was out sick, so he was pulling double duty. "Can I help you folks?" Elias asked, adjusting his glasses. The wife flashed a megawatt smile, her teeth gleaming unnaturally white.
"Oh, absolutely, Doctor. I'm Dr. Lila Voss, and this is my husband, Dr. Marcus Voss. We're dentists, just like you. We've been traveling the country, building practices in big cities, Chicago, Denver, even L.A., but we're looking to settle down in a charming spot like this. We'd love to join your team."
Elias raised an eyebrow. He'd never advertised for help. His practice was steady, but solo. "Well, that's flattering, but I'm not exactly hiring. Business is good, but it's just me here." Marcus leaned in, his voice smooth as silk. "Come on, Doc. We've got skills that could take this place to the next level. Think about it. More patients, shorter wait times. We've turned floundering offices into gold mines. Let us show you what we can do." The couple exchanged a glance, something sly passing between them. Elias hesitated. He was a cautious man, raised on the values of hard work and trust earned slow. "All right," he said finally. "Demonstrate your skills and we'll talk. But nothing fancy. A simple checkup or cleaning." Lila's eyes lit up.
"Perfect! How about a teeth cleaning? You be the patient, Doctor. It'll be quick and painless."
Elias chuckled uneasily, but he led them to the exam room. He settled into the chair, the familiar hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Marcus opened his toolbox first, and instead of tools, out came a vintage record player. He placed the needle down, and soft melodic jazz filled the air, trumpets weaving with piano keys, lulling like a warm blanket. "Relaxation music," Marcus explained, "helps patients unwind. We find it boosts trust." Elias nodded, his eyelids growing heavy. The music was hypnotic, wrapping around his thoughts. "That's nice," he murmured, his voice trailing off. Then Lila opened her box. Elias blinked through the haze, expecting scalers and floss. Instead, she pulled out comically oversized pliers that could wrench a tire off a truck, a hammer and chisel straight from a cartoon, and a squirt gun filled with who knows what. His mind fogged. He smiled dopily, eyes glazing over. "What's all that for?" he slurred, but it came out garbled. Lila slipped on a pair of glasses with thick lenses, black swirls etched like spirals on the glass. She leaned over him. She grinned wide, teeth bared in a predatory flash.
"Just relax, Doctor. Look right here."
The swirls on her lenses seemed to spin, drawing him in. Elias's reflection in her eyes showed his own pupils mirroring the motion, whirling faster, pulling him under. His body went limp, mine blank as a fresh snowfall. In the waiting room, patients shifted uncomfortably. Marcus had slipped behind the desk, tapping away at the computer. Next up, Mrs. Jenkins. It'll be $850 for the extraction. Insurance? Oh, we don't take that anymore. Mrs. Jenkins frowned. But Dr. Harper always knew policy. Marcus cut in, his mustache twitching. Cash or card? Lila moved on to the first patient, a middle-aged woman named Amy, who'd come for a routine filling. Amy lay back, uneasy but compliant under the jazz's spell. Lila brandished the massive pliers.
Open wide, darling. This won't hurt a bit. Much.
Amy's eyes widened. Wait, is that... But Lila was already at work, yanking with theatrical flair. The tools weren't for real dentistry. They were props in a twisted performance. The couple had honed this scam across states, hypnotized the owner, fleeced the patients, vanished before dawn. Lila reveled in it. The power. The thrill. Growing up in a trailer park outside Omaha, she had learned early that men like Elias underestimated women like her. Her curves were her weapon. Her wits, the blade. Marcus was the brains, but she was the fire. By noon, the office was in chaos. Patients grumbled as bills skyrocketed. $500 for a cleaning, $1,200 for a checkup. One man, a burly farmer type named Hank, slammed his fist on the desk. "This is robbery! Where's Dr. Harper?" Marcus smiled serenely. "He's indisposed. Trust us, we're professionals."
For our 5th anniversary, Daniel rented a cabin next to Hawkins Lake. We'd never been there before, but the photos looked gorgeous. We both grew up in a very landlocked area, so we were fascinated by lakeside communities like Hawken. We checked into our cabin, which was just as nice as the pictures. It had its own dock, with a cute blue rowboat just for us. I couldn't wait to ride around the lake. It seemed so romantic. But first, we headed into town for a walk around. Daniel really wanted to try the boat out, but I convinced him to explore the area first. I just love people watching. We were browsing through a cute little antique shop when I noticed a girl with pale blue eyes staring at me from the other side of a shelf of clocks. She didn't move. She didn't say anything. She just stared at me, and not in a friendly way. "Can I help you?" The girl disappeared behind some shelves. I'm not sure why I followed her. I guess I was a little creeped out by her pale blue eyes. I looked all around the store until I spotted her behind a rocking chair. She was still staring. I cornered her. "Is there something wrong?" "Don't get in the boat." I was so unnerved by what she said, I let her walk right past me. Daniel walked over with an old radio that he wanted me to see, and he asked me what was wrong. I must have looked pretty spooked. I told him about the strange girl's warning, and he scoffed. "Small towns do this kind of stuff all the time. It's a publicity thing, trying to build mystique or whatever." I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't stop shivering. We went back to our cabin after that, and Daniel changed into his swim clothes. He expected me to do the same, but I lost all desire to go to the lake. "I don't want to use that boat. Honey, promise me you won't." He promised, which instantly made me feel better. Daniel always kept his word. I stayed inside, watching him through the window. He was walking along the edge of a lake, letting the water slosh around his feet. He looked up at me and waved. I waved back. The rowboat floated behind him, untouched. I left to grab an iced tea. But when I returned to the window, Daniel was gone. I thought he was swimming until I noticed that the rowboat was gone too. My heart pounded. I knew I was being irrational, but I couldn't help it. That creepy girl had really gotten to me. I waited for Daniel on the couch to come back. He didn't. But after an hour, I decided to go look for him. I waited along the shore, searching for any signs of the blue boat. "Daniel, where are you?" He never answered. Despite some marshy areas, I could see the entire lake, and Daniel was nowhere to be found. I started running along the shore. I slowed when I got to the next cabin. An old man was sitting with a fishing pole on the edge of his dock. "Excuse me, have you seen a man paddling out there with a boat?" The old man pretended not to hear me, so I repeated myself. He ignored me again. I'm not a confrontational person, but I was desperate. I grabbed the fishing pole out of his hands. "I'm looking for my husband. He should have come back by now." The old man stared at the lake. "Was he in a blue rowboat?" "Yes. Have you seen him?" Instead of answering, he pointed straight ahead. I followed his gaze and saw a speck of blue in the distance. The boat was floating on the other side of the lake, and it was empty. Still wearing my regular clothes, I jumped off the dock and started swimming. The water was colder than I thought. It would have been refreshing if I wasn't in such a panic. I was swimming as fast as I could, and suddenly I got a cramp in my side, and I was barely getting enough oxygen, but I just couldn't stop. In minutes, I reached the other side of the lake. I grabbed the side of the boat and climbed in. Daniel's flip-flops were inside, but the rest of him wasn't. I called out for Daniel, but no answer. I paddled around, scanning the surface of the water, and after 30 minutes of searching, I gave up. I needed help. I rode to the dock and then raced back to the main street. I went into the first shop I saw and told them that my husband was missing. It was a bait shop, and the older man behind the counter looked at me with pity. Not surprised, though. I asked him if he knew what happened. He shrugged. "Sorry, ma'am. I have no idea." Then a girl walked out from behind the counter. The same small girl with pale blue eyes. She gave the old man a single nod, and the man headed into the back room. Now it was just me and the girl. She walked towards me, her expression blank. Then she gave me a tight hug. I waited for her to speak. "I'm glad you're safe. Thanks for listening to me." "Safe from what? What happened?" The girl let me go and walked into the back room, probably to join her grandfather. I never got any more information after that. I filed a missing persons report with the local police, and they formed a search party. Although Daniel was never found, and the little blue rowboat, the one I tied to our dock, that was gone too. This story is inspired from a real-life event. In May 2025, authorities recovered a body from Georgia's Lake Lanier, days after a kayaker Dustin Valencia went missing. Valencia, 43, a father of 5, vanished on May 14th after taking his family's inflatable kayak onto a vast lake. His kayak and paddle were found, but he remained missing until May 16th, when the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office announced the body's recovery. Valencia's wife reported him missing as he failed to pick up their children from school. His car was found parked nearby. Officials noted his kayak seats were not inflated or installed. Identification of the recovered body remained pending.
My roommate John was a male model. I'm sure some models are actually nice people, but not John. The guy was an absolute jerk. He refused to be seen with me unless I wore clothes that weren't embarrassing. And since I was a struggling writer on a budget, basically nothing I owned met his standards. He regularly threw out my leftovers from the fridge because he didn't want my unhealthy food to contaminate his pre-planned meals. I could go on and on. He did 1,000 little things that genuinely made my life harder. Now, I'm not an ugly guy, but I'm obviously not a model. The way he treated me made me feel like a gargoyle. You're probably wondering why I didn't find another apartment. Well, we live in Miami on the riverfront. Housing is ridiculous here, and there was no way I'd be able to afford anything nearly as nice on my meager earnings as a freelance writer. I just had to deal with him. One night, I was walking home when I saw John and some of his model friends on the street. He obviously invited them over for a party at our place. which meant that he expected me to stay in my room and act like I wasn't there. I usually did what he asked because I'm not great at standing up for myself, but since we were all heading to the same place, I couldn't exactly hide from them. So I hurried to catch up with them. "John, hey!" He looked at me like I was a homeless person asking for money. One of his model friends asked him if he knew me. "I have no idea." Then he looked right into my eyes, a serious expression on his face. "You better hurry home, sir." The implication was clear. He wanted me to rush into our apartment and hide out in my room before he took his friends inside. I should have argued with him, but he had a way of making all my confidence disappear with a single look. His handsomeness made him that intimidating. So I walked past them and turned the corner onto the alley behind our house. The streetlight stopped working a few weeks before, so it was very dark. I was almost at our door when I saw something flash from the inside of a water drain. It looked like a piece of jewelry, and I stepped closer to get a better look. And that's when the shiny object moved. I stumbled backward. It was an alligator. Jesus! I'd seen the light reflecting in its cold, hungry eye. If I'd gotten any closer, it would have attacked. Even now, I didn't feel safe. I hurried down the alley, too scared to even approach my door. I waited at a safe distance, struggling to catch my breath. And that's when I saw John and his friends walk into the alley. When he saw that I was still outside, he looked furious. He'd been distracting his friends for a while, waiting for me to hide myself. "John, be careful!" John just glared. He said something to his friends. I couldn't hear it, but I heard them all laughing. Then, I saw John look down at the storm drain. He noticed the shiny object too. Oh God. "Don't! John, please!" He didn't listen. I watched in horror as he crouched in front of the drain, unknowingly staring into the face of an alligator. Then, his whole body jerked. It was too dark for me to see the alligator, but I could tell it had latched onto John's head. His body flopped onto the ground, and his arms and legs thrashed around. He didn't scream. He probably couldn't. His friends should have pulled him to safety, but none of them did. A few ran away immediately. The rest just stood there, frozen, until they too abandoned their so-called friend. I didn't realize I was running toward him until I was already there. I grabbed him by the sides and pulled him back. The alligator snapped its mouth at us, but thank God it was too big to crawl out of the drain. It could only reach the front of its long snout out of the darkness, which is why John was still alive. It snapped its jaws into his face, but didn't have the ability to clamp onto his head. John was lying at my feet. His chest was rising and falling rapidly, so I knew he was still alive. His face was a bloody mass of tissue. I was looking straight at him, but I couldn't see his features. Just lumps of flesh. I dialed 911. "Hello? There's been an alligator attack. He's hurt bad." 5 minutes later, the paramedics took him away. They asked if I wanted to stay with him in the ambulance. I guess I was holding his hand the whole time. I automatically said yes. I was by his side as we sped to the hospital. Then, it was hours of sitting in the waiting room as the doctors did what they could do. None of his model friends bothered to show up. The next day, I was waiting by his bedside when he finally came to. His face was covered in bandages, so I couldn't see how bad it was. His mouth and one eye were the only parts visible. What happened? I told him to wait for the doctors to come in and talk with him. I didn't want to give him the bad news. His nose was gone. He lost an eye. They had to stitch up the rest of his face as best they could. "No, tell me. I want to hear it from a friend." That was the first time he'd ever called me a friend. He certainly never treated me like one. I didn't know what to say. I've always been a shy, non-confrontational person. That's probably why I let him treat me like garbage all these years. But in that moment, I was blunt and honest. I told him everything, expecting him to freak out. His entire life was built around his handsome face, and now that was gone. To my surprise, he didn't cry or scream. Instead, he closed his remaining eye and whispered, "He tried to warn me. I should have listened." All this happened 2 years ago. You might have heard about it on the news or read my best-selling book, The Model Without a Face. They're making it into a Lifetime movie next summer, so that's exciting. It's crazy that this whole situation has really jump-started my career. Now, despite multiple reconstructive surgeries and a very realistic-looking fake eye, John never got back his good looks. He works from home now, in a low-paying telemarketing job. We still live together, and when he's not in one of his depressions, he's a pretty great roommate. He appreciates me now. I'm the only person who doesn't recoil when I see his face. This story has been loosely inspired from a real-life scenario. In May of 2023, during a routine pipe inspection in Oviedo, Florida, municipal crews made a startling discovery. A 5-foot alligator was spotted deep inside a stormwater pipe beneath a busy street. Contractors using a robotic camera found the unbothered reptile resting calmly about 90 feet in, before it retreated another 250 feet into darkness, giving what officials jokingly called a serious side-eye. This was not the first sighting. A similar alligator had been recorded in the same system earlier that year. Despite the surprise encounter, no structural damage was found. Officials confirmed the nearby Econlockhatchee River allows alligators easy access.
I was half dead by the time I reached the motel. 5 days of back-to-back panels, networking mixers, and pitching at an influencer summit had wrung every ounce of energy out of me. I'd gotten maybe 10 hours of sleep across the entire week. I could have passed out on gravel. The motel was off the interstate, about 20 minutes from the airport. The kind of place you don't look at too closely. The flickering neon sign, damp carpet, scratchy sheets, and a faint mustiness that clung to the air like mold. Still, it was cheap and had a bed. That was enough. I didn't even bother brushing my teeth and face-planted onto the mattress. I was out before 8 p.m. I don't know how long I was asleep for when the phone rang. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Front desk," a man said. His voice was flat, like someone reading off a script. "We received a noise complaint from your room." My brain was too fogged to understand. "What? I've been sleeping. I haven't made a sound." There was a pause. Then, "Are you alone in the room, ma'am?" "What? Yes, of course. There's no one else here but me," I said, rubbing my face. "You're sure you're by yourself, ma'am?" "Yes! I'm alone. No one else. No noise," I snapped, annoyed. "All right," he said slowly, and the line clicked dead. I collapsed back into sleep without giving it another thought. The next morning, the memory came rushing back. Something about the call had been off. The way he'd asked me the same question twice, the tone, the phrasing, and strangest of all, I hadn't heard a single sound in the motel that night. No TV, no footsteps in the hallway, no muffled arguments through the walls. Dead quiet. I stopped at the front desk on my way out for coffee. "Hey, did you guys call me last night about a noise complaint?" The woman at the counter frowned. "No, we didn't have any calls or complaints logged." My stomach turned. "So, no one called room 308 around 11? She shook her head. "Is that your room?" "Yeah." She hesitated, then leaned in slightly. "Did the caller ask if you were alone?" "Yeah, twice." Her eyes narrowed. "You should have reported that." I left my coffee behind. Back in the room, Something felt wrong. I double-checked the latch in the door, still hooked, but I could swear something had been moved. My phone charger wasn't where I'd left it, and the little bolt in the bathroom window was unlocked. I hadn't touched it. I checked the closet, the bathroom, under the bed. Nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been inside. Paranoia's a funny thing. I tried brushing it off. Maybe I'd been too tired to remember locking the window. Maybe I knocked the charger myself. Maybe the call was a prank. But around 4 p.m., the motel's Wi-Fi kicked me off. When I went to reconnect, I saw a network pop up. 308 cam. My heart stopped. I tapped it, but it was locked, encrypted. I bolted to the front desk again. The woman was gone, replaced by a balding man who had barely looked up from his magazine. "Who cleaned room 308 before I checked in?" He shrugged. "We don't do daily turnarounds. Nobody's been in there since last week." "No staff at all?" "Nope." I stared at him. He didn't blink. "Have you ever got calls from guests saying they've been asked weird questions, like if they're alone?" He gave me a look. "This is a motel, ma'am. We get lots of weird calls." Back in my room, I checked every outlet, every vent, the fire alarm on the ceiling. Finally, above the wardrobe, tucked behind a loose ceiling tile, I found it. A small, cheap Wi-Fi enabled spy cam, battery operated, with a narrow lens pointing right at the bed. I nearly vomited. My first instinct was to smash it. But then I remembered, if I wanted proof, I had to be smart. I packed my bag, went outside, and called a friend from back home who worked in tech investigations. He walked me through what to grab. Footage, metadata, MAC address, and timestamps. I got it all. And then I waited. That night, I left the room looking untouched. Clothes on the floor, TV remote on the bed, bathroom light on. I booked the room next door instead and waited, listening. At exactly 2:17 a.m., I heard the lock on 308 click. Through the peephole of my new room, I saw him. Not a motel employee, young guy, black hoodie, carrying what looked like a toolkit in a laptop bag. He slipped into my room like he'd done it 100 times. I called 911 and told them someone had broken into my room. They caught him 20 minutes later, coming out with his backpack stuffed full of electronics. Turns out, he'd done it before, multiple times, across different states. He would scan for solo female travelers, exhausted, careless, vulnerable, and spy on them. Sometimes he sold the footage. Sometimes he just watched. The motel knew. He wasn't an employee, but he'd paid a manager with the promise of uncut footage to get access to master keys. They denied everything, of course. The case is still on. I've never slept in a motel again. And I always use the chain lock.
I used to think I was just forgetful. A few eggs missing, a bit less soup in the pot than I remembered, damp towels when I hadn't used any. At first, I blamed stress. Maybe I was losing my mind, memory gaps, careless housekeeping. But it went on for months. My dishwasher ran full loads even when I only ate out of one bowl. One afternoon, I found the butter dish smeared across the counter like someone used it with bare hands. It was greasy and foul. That's when I started locking the door to my pantry, like a fool trying to protect what was already gone. The truth came out by accident. I heard a sound in the attic, a low thump followed by a shuffling, almost like someone crawling. I grabbed a flashlight and pulled down the ladder. Up there, under old blankets and behind boxes of Christmas decorations, was a makeshift den. A sleeping bag, a pillow, a stack of tinned soup, and a portable hot plate, complete with charred edges on a makeshift wooden table. I dropped the flashlight. I called the police. They camped out inside my house for 2 nights until they caught him. A man, maybe early 40s, wiry, beard rough and patchy, climbing a tree at night like a raccoon, searching for the attic vent. His name was Darren. No ID, no known address, just a shrug and a weary look in his eyes. Here's the strange part. I didn't press charges. I told the police I wasn't frightened. A lie. I told them maybe he just needed help. Also a lie. The truth is, I didn't want people asking why I hadn't noticed sooner. Why I lived beneath someone for months without realizing. So I told them to let him go. They did. The next day, Darren showed up again. Not sneaking, just standing in my backyard like he was waiting to be let in. "What do you want?" I asked from the porch. "You got good soup," he said with a grin. That night, I made dinner for two. It became a routine. He never stayed in the house, always climbed back into the attic through the same old vent. I let him. He didn't ask for much. A warm meal, a quiet place. Some nights I even found myself sitting across from him at the table, sipping wine, talking about books he'd read or things he'd heard on the radio. He was oddly well-spoken, claimed he had a degree, said he used to work in tech, said there'd been a fire, a layoff, a divorce. Every night it was a new version. One night, after we'd finished dinner and the last drops of wine were gone, Darren didn't head for the attic. Instead, he came up behind me as I was clearing the table, his hand gently caressing my back. I froze, a plate still in my hand. The quiet hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. "You're treating me well," he murmured, his voice deeper than usual, "taking care of my rest and food. But I need more." My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Disgust coiled within me. But then he spoke again, his voice soft, almost pleading. "You're so pretty," he whispered. "You resemble Jennifer Lawrence." It had been years since anyone had truly praised me, years since I'd felt seen in that way. The words, unexpected and jarring in the moment, lodged themselves somewhere deep inside. I stood there, plate in hand, Darren's words echoing in my head. His touch lingered on my back, warm and unsettling. My pulse raced, torn between disgust and a strange, fleeting thrill. No one had called me pretty in years, let alone compared me to Jennifer Lawrence. It was absurd, manipulative even, but it stirred something I hadn't felt in ages. "This can't happen again," I said, stepping away, my voice sharper than I meant. You're just some homeless guy, Darren. This was a mistake." His face fell, the naughty grin fading. Without a word, he climbed the attic ladder, the creak of the steps swallowing the silence. I heard faint sobs through the ceiling that night, raw and broken. I wasn't his savior. The next evening he returned, eyes red and swollen. But there was a hardness in them now, a glint of anger. Before I could speak, he grabbed a coil of rope from the corner, some old camping gear I'd forgotten about. "You think you're better than me?" he snarled, his voice low and jagged. He tied my wrists, rough but not brutal, and pinned me to the couch. My breath caught, fear spiking, but I didn't fight. Not then. "I'm sorry," I whispered, playing along, my voice trembling. I didn't mean it." He didn't answer, just took what he wanted. He was like a man starved for something more than food. I let it happen, my mind detaching, floating somewhere else. It wasn't about desire, it was survival, or maybe something sicker I couldn't name. For a few nights it continued. He'd come down from the attic, eyes still carrying that angry edge, and I'd let him. I told myself he had needs, just like I'd needed his flattery, his fleeting praise that made me feel alive again. We were two broken things, feeding off each other's desperation. I cooked for him, set the table, poured the wine. He'd eat, we'd talk, and then the air would shift, his hands finding me again. I obliged, night after night, telling myself it was temporary, that I was in control. Then came the night he ruined everything. I'd spent hours on the soup, caramelized onions, fresh thyme, a dash of cream. He took one spoonful, grimaced, and shoved the bowl away. "This is crap," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You call this food?" Something snapped inside me. The words cut deeper than his hands ever had. My soup was my pride, my small act of care in this twisted arrangement. I grabbed the kitchen knife on the counter, my knuckles white. "You don't get to say that," I hissed, stepping closer. His eyes widened, but he didn't move fast enough. The knife sank into his chest, clean and quick. He gasped, stumbling back, blood blooming across his shirt. I stabbed again, then again, rage pouring out of me like a flood. He crumpled to the floor, eyes glassy, the attic ladder looming behind him like a silent witness. I stood over him, breathing hard, the knife still in my hand. The kitchen smelled of thyme and iron. I wiped the blade on a dish towel, my hands steady now. A strange calm settled over me, a clarity I hadn't felt in months. "My soup," I said softly, almost to myself, "is the best." I smiled, the weight of him gone, the house mine again.
I met Derek at a dive bar in Chicago. The kind with sticky floors and neon signs that flickered like they were on their last breath. He was tall, with a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes that promised trouble. I was nursing a whiskey sour, bored out of my mind, when he slid onto the stool next to me. "You look like you're running from something," he said, his voice low and rough. I laughed, thinking it was just a line. I had no idea how right he was. We got to talking, and I asked him if he liked to travel. His face twisted like I'd asked him to eat dirt. "Travel is a scam," he said, leaning in close. "The Earth's flat, you know. All those pictures of foreign places, CGI bullshit, and it's dangerous. If you go too far, you might fall off the edge." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but it never came. His eyes were dead serious, like he just dropped some profound truth. I should have walked away right then, but his confidence was magnetic, and I was tipsy enough to be curious. I called it a night soon after, but not before swapping numbers. A week later, I invited him over, half expecting him to show up with a tinfoil hat on. Instead, he showed up with a bottle of cheap wine and a body that knew exactly what it was doing. The night was electric, the kind that leaves you breathless and a little ashamed. He moved like he was claiming territory, and for a few hours, I didn't care how dumb he was. But when he started whispering about how the moon was a government hologram, I knew I couldn't keep this going. I ghosted him after that, figuring he'd take the hint. A month later, I was in Spain, a solo trip to clear my head. Barcelona was everything Chicago wasn't. Vibrant, alive, with streets that smelled like salt and citrus. I was sipping sangria at a rooftop bar, flirting with an athletic Indian guy named Vikram, when I saw him. Derek, standing across the bar, staring at me like a predator. My stomach dropped. "I'm here to keep you safe," he said when he cornered me later, his voice dripping with that same unhinged conviction. "Lauren, you don't know what's out there. The edge is closer than you think." I laughed and told him to off, but he didn't. He followed me everywhere, through the Gothic Quarter, past Gaudi's wild architecture, even to my hotel. I'd see him lurking in doorways, his silhouette unmistakable. I told myself he was just a creep, not dangerous. But every night, I checked my locks twice. One evening, I was out with Vikram again. He was charming, with a runner's body and a laugh that made my skin tingle. Suddenly, Derek stormed in, eyes wild. "You're coming back to Chicago with me," he growled, grabbing my fist. Before I could react, his hand was around my neck, squeezing just enough to make my vision blur. Vikram tried to intervene, but Derek shoved him into a table, plates crashing to the floor. "She's mine!" he screamed, like it was some kind of property. Vikram dialed the police. They hauled Derek away in cuffs, his voice echoing as he screamed about conspiracies and edges. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong again. Back in Chicago, I tried to move on. Vikram and I kept in touch, texting flirty messages that turned into late-night video calls. He was in New York for work, and I planned to visit him, maybe turn our spark into something more. But Derek wasn't done with me. I started getting texts from unknown numbers, pictures of me in Spain, at the bar, on the street, even one of me sleeping in my hotel room. My blood ran cold. How the hell had he gotten that? I changed my number, moved to a new apartment, but the texts kept coming. Then, one night, I came home to find my front door ajar. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, the air thick with the smell of cigarette smoke. Derek was sitting on my couch, a knife in his hand, twirling it like it was a toy. "I told you, Lauren, I'm keeping you safe. The world's lying to you. I'm the only one who sees it," he said, his voice calm but deadly. I bolted for the door, but he was faster. He grabbed me, pinning me against the wall, the knife pressed to my ribs. "You think you can run from the truth?" He hissed at me. His breath was hot on my face, and for a moment, I thought this was it. "Derek, you're right. I've been blind. Tell me about the truth," I said, forcing my voice to soften, though it trembled. I leaned into him slightly, my hand brushing his arm, trying to hide my disgust. He blinked, caught off guard, the knife loosening against me. You actually want to know?" His voice cracked, desperate for validation. "Yes, Derek," I lied, nodding slowly. "I trust you. Let's sit and talk it over." I guided him to the couch, my mind racing. He sat, still clutching the knife, but his grip slackened as I leaned over. I swallowed the bile in my throat and kept all my eyes locked on his, faking a smile. "You're different, Lauren. You get it," he murmured, his free hand reaching for my face. "Yes, I do, Derek," I whispered, his breathing hitched, the knife dropping to his lap. I hated every second, but I needed him vulnerable. "Derek, you're so strong," I cooed, my voice sickeningly sweet as I kept going, feeling his guard drop. "You've been protecting me this whole time." He groaned, eyes fluttering, completely lost in the moment. My chance was now. With a sudden, brutal grip, I squeezed his balls as hard as I could. He yelped, doubling over, the knife clattering to the floor. I didn't let go, my nails digging in as I screamed. "Promise me you'll leave me alone, Derek! Swear it, or I'll rip them off!" He whimpered, tears streaming down his face. Okay, I swear. Just please stop!" His voice was high-pitched, pathetic, nothing like the predator he'd been moments ago. "Say it again, Derek! You'll never come near me!" I shouted, tightening my grip. I swear, I'll never bother you again, please!" He sobbed, curling into himself like a scolded child. I shoved him off the couch and he scrambled to his feet, clutching himself, tears and snot mixing on his face. "You're crazy!" he wailed, stumbling toward the door. "Get out!" I roared, grabbing the knife and brandishing it. He bolted, crying like a baby, the sound fading as he disappeared down the hall. I collapsed, shaking, the knife still in my hand. I locked the door, checked every window, and called Vikram, my voice breaking as I told him everything. He promised to fly to Chicago the next day.
I pulled up to the old house in rural Pennsylvania just as the sun was dipping behind the hills. It was one of those B&Bs that popped up on Airbnb. Charming photos of lace curtains and homemade muffins, promising a cozy weekend getaway from the city grind. My wife, Rosalie, and I needed it bad. Work had been hell for both of us. She was pulling double shifts at the hospital, and I was buried in deadlines. "This looks perfect," Rosalie said as we grabbed our bags, her eyes lighting up at the wraparound porch dotted with rocking chairs. Inside, the place had that antique vibe. Polished wood floors, floral wallpaper, and, yeah, a whole wall of creepy porcelain dolls staring down from shelves in the parlor. Their glassy eyes followed you, but I shrugged it off. Dolls are a thing in old houses, I muttered to Rosalie. The owner, this guy named Harold, greeted us at the check-in desk. He was in his late 50s, balding with a perpetual half-smile that didn't reach his eyes.
"Welcome, folks. Room's upstairs. Breakfast at 8 sharp."
His voice was gravelly, like he'd smoked a pack a day since Nixon. We hauled our stuff to the second floor. The room was cute. Beautiful bed, quilt that smelled like lavender, a little in-suite bathroom with clawfoot tub. Rosalie flopped onto the mattress. Finally, some alone time. She winked, and I felt that familiar spark. After unpacking, she headed for the shower. I scrolled through emails on my phone, trying to unwind. Suddenly, something caught my eye. Scratches on the hardwood floor near the bookcase, like it'd been dragged back and forth. "Wait, babe, hold up," I whispered, sitting up. Rosalie frowned. "What? Don't tell me you're thinking about work." I shook my head and got up to inspect. The bookcase wobbled when I pushed it, definitely not fixed to the wall. With a shove, it swung open like a door, revealing a narrow passage. "Holy shit," I said. Rosalie wrapped the towel tighter. "What the hell is that?" We peered in. A cluttered room with a desk, ancient computer, stacks of papers, and junk everywhere. It smelled musty, like old books and dust. I marched downstairs to find Harold polishing a doll in the parlor. "Hey man, what's with the secret door in our room?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He set the doll down, that weird smile creeping back.
"Oh, that? Yeah, it's functional. Leads to my office."
He ambled upstairs with me like it was no big deal and demonstrated. The door creaked open from our side. No handle, just a push. On his side, a deadbolt lock.
"See? Secure as can be."
"Is there a lock on our side?" I pressed, my gut twisting. He chuckled, low and throaty.
"No, sir. But don't you worry. We respect privacy here."
His eyes lingered a beat too long on the rumpled bed, where Rosalie stood in her towel, arms crossed. I felt my face heat. "You didn't think to mention a hidden entrance to our room? That's kind of fucked up." Harold just smiled wider.
"Old house, full of surprises. Built in the 1800s. Secret passages for the Underground Railroad, they say. Adds character."
He backed out, still grinning.
"Sleep tight."
Rosalie and I exchanged looks. "This is creepy as hell," she said once he was gone. "What if there are cameras? Or he sneaks in?" "No way we're staying vulnerable," I replied. That night, passion killed, we barricaded the bookcase with a chair and our suitcase. I barely slept, jumping at every creak. Rosalie tossed too. "I feel like we're being watched," she whispered around 2 a.m. Morning came slow. Over breakfast, stale muffins and weak coffee, Harold chatted about local history.
"Those dolls? Family heirlooms. Each has a story."
Rosalie forced a smile. "Fascinating. Hey, mind if I grab some fresh air?" While she wandered, I stalled Harold with small talk. But Rosalie slipped upstairs, curiosity burning. She texted me, pushing the door open now. My heart pounded. She came back, pale. You won't believe this. In the office, amid the clutter, she'd found a notebook. Sketches of guests, detailed notes on couples. Like he was studying us, she said. But then, the twist. Flipping pages, she uncovered old photos and letters. Harold's wife had died years ago in that room. Suicide, hidden by the family. The office was her old study. He'd sealed it off, but kept the door for visits. The dolls, hers. The notes, therapy journaling about grief, mistaking guests for echoes of his lost life. We confronted him. Why the secrets? Rosalie demanded. Tears welled in his eyes.
Didn't want to scare folks away. This place is all I got left of her.
His creepy vibe? Social awkwardness from isolation. No cameras. Just a broken man. We checked out early, but not before Rosalie hugged him. Get help, Harold. Talk to someone. Driving away, she squeezed my hand. That was wild, but I'm glad we know the truth. This story is inspired from a real-life event shared by one of my subscribers. This is what he said. We booked a cozy-looking B&B in Pennsylvania. Charming at first glance, aside from a strange wall of antique dolls in the main lounge. Things got weird once we were in our room. I noticed marks near a bookshelf, and after some poking around, found it concealed a door. I asked the owner, who already felt off, if it worked. He grinned and led me through to their messy office. There was a lock on their side. When I asked if it could be locked from our side too, he just smiled and said no. Needless to say, that night we kept the lights low, skipped any intimacy, because, cameras, and shoved furniture against the secret door. Barely slept a wink.
It was a humid August evening in Chicago, the kind where the air sticks to your skin. I'd matched with Ethan on a dating app, his profile boasting a charming smile and a bio that read, "Hopeless romantic seeking his forever." I figured, why not? I was 28, single, and ready for something new. The date started at a cozy Italian restaurant in the Loop. Ethan was handsome, tall, with tousled brown hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through me. He was charismatic, cracking jokes and telling stories about his travels. But barely 30 minutes in, he leaned across the table, his eyes gleaming with an intensity that made my stomach twist. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and serious. "I know this is fast, but I want to marry you." I laughed thinking it was a quirky icebreaker. "What, like right now? Slow down, cowboy." "No, Sarah, I'm serious," he insisted, grabbing my hand. "I married my first wife 3 weeks after meeting her, my second 2 weeks. And I want to break my record with you. 1 week, 1 day. We could be at City Hall by midnight." I blinked, my fork froze in midair. "You're joking, right?" He grinned, but it wasn't playful. It was manic. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life. You're the one, Sarah. I can feel it." I played along, thinking he was just eccentric. We finished dinner, and he suggested a cab to keep the night going. I agreed, still chuckling at his proposal stunt. But when he leaned forward and told the driver, "City Hall, please," my heart dropped. "Ethan, what the hell?" I snapped, my voice sharp enough to make the driver glance back. "Trust me, Sarah, this is fate," he said, his hand gripping mine too tightly. I yanked my hand free, my pulse racing. "Stop the car, please," I told the driver. "I gotta be somewhere." I bolted out at a red light, my heels clicking against the pavement as I blocked Ethan's number on my phone. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next day I was home. I was sipping coffee when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Ethan standing there. His eyes red-rimmed, his clothes rumpled. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I came on too strong. Can we talk, please? He said, voice breaking. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He looked pathetic, like a kicked puppy. You have 5 minutes, I said, crossing my arms. He nodded, stepping inside. I just want to explain. Before I could react, he pulled a small canister from his pocket and sprayed something in my face. A sharp chemical smell hit me, and the room spun. My knees buckled and everything went black. When I came to, my wrist burned from tight ropes, and a rag was stuffed in my mouth, tasting of sweat and dust. I was in the back seat of a car, the city lights replaced by dark, empty fields. Ethan was in the driver's seat. He glanced back, noticing I was awake. "Oh, good, you're up," he said, pulling over onto a deserted stretch of road. He climbed into the back, his face inches from mine. He yanked the gag out. "Sarah, I need you to hear this. I love you very much. You need to marry me, tonight." My throat was dry, but I managed to croak out, "You're insane. Let me go." His face darkened and he pulled a syringe from his jacket, the needle glinting in the moonlight. "Don't make this hard, Sarah," he said, his voice cold. "We're meant to be." He pricked my chest with a needle, just enough to sting. I gasped, the pain sharp and real. He did it again, harder, and tears welled in my eyes. "Okay, I'll marry you! Just stop!" I screamed. He smiled like a kid who'd won a prize. "That's my girl." We drove to a seedy 24-hour chapel on the outskirts of the city. The officiant, a greasy man with a stained shirt, didn't blink at my disheveled state or the rope marks on my wrists. Ethan had cash, and that was enough for him. I said I do through gritted teeth, my mind racing for an escape. The certificate was signed, and Ethan beamed, oblivious to the hatred in my eyes. Back at his dingy apartment, I played the part of the doting wife. Biding my time, Ethan was a drifter, barely scraping by on odd jobs. His romantic facade hiding a fractured mind. He rambled about his ex-wives, how they'd betrayed him, how I was his final chance at love. I nodded, smiled, and planned. A week later, I slipped out while he slept, using his own phone to call a friend for a ride. I went straight to the police, but Ethan had vanished by the time they raided his place. The cops found photos of me, hundreds of them, taken from a distance, long before our date. He'd been stalking me for months, building a fantasy I never knew I was a part of. I wasn't going to let him win. I hired one of Chicago's top divorce lawyers, a shark named Rachel Klein who ate cases like Ethan's for breakfast. "This guy is a lunatic," she said, flipping through the police report. "Don't worry, we'll bury him. Be sure to make it hurt," I replied. Rachel dug into Ethan's past. His first wife was a woman he'd coerced into a fake marriage in Vegas, annulled after she fled. His second wife didn't even exist, just a story he told to seem charmingly impulsive. He'd been in and out of psych wards, dodging charges for harassment and fraud. The man was a walking con, and I was his latest mark. In court, Ethan showed up in a cheap suit, still grinning like he'd won me over. "Sarah, I love you. We're soulmates," he said from the stand, voice dripping with sincerity. "Save it. You kidnapped me, you psycho." I shot back. The judge wasn't impressed by Ethan's theatrics. Rachel painted him as a predator, using the photos, the police report, and my testimony to secure a divorce and a hefty alimony settlement. Ethan had little money, but Rachel went after his assets, a beat-up car, a small savings account, even his collection of rare coins he'd bragged about. She left him with nothing. By the time it was over, Ethan was homeless, sleeping in alleys and shelters. I'd heard he'd taken to telling strangers about his marriage records, spinning tales of whirlwind romances to anyone who'd listen. He'd laugh, his eyes wild, as if he still believed he was a romantic hero.
I remember that trip to London like it was yesterday, even though it was back in 2018, right after I graduated college. I'd saved up for months working as a barista in Seattle, dreaming of backpacking through Europe on a shoestring budget. My plan was simple: cheap flights, hostels, and living off street food. But then I got a message from my old high school friends, Sarah and Emily, who were doing their own Euro trip.
Hey, Rick, we're in London for a week. Meet up?
Sarah texted. I was in Paris at the time, so I hopped on a budget train and met them at Victoria Station. We hugged like we hadn't seen each other in years. Well, it had been 2 since we'd all scattered after school. Sarah, with her wild curly hair and that infectious laugh, was studying abroad in Madrid. And Emily, the quiet one with the killer photography skills, had just quit her job in Chicago to find herself. Me, I was the adventurous one, or so I thought, hauling my ratty backpack everywhere. Dude, you look exhausted, Emily said, eyeing my rumpled clothes. Let's find a place to crash. Nothing fancy. We're all broke. We scoured the internet on Sarah's phone for the cheapest hotel near King's Cross. Ended up booking this dingy spot called the Regent Inn for like 50 quid a night. It's got 2 single beds, the listing said. Perfect for us, I replied, figuring we'd make it work. The clerk, this grumpy old guy with a thick Cockney accent, handed us the key without a smile.
Room 204, up the stairs. No refunds.
The room was tiny. Barely enough space for the 2 beds pushed against the walls, a rickety nightstand, and a window overlooking a noisy alley. The carpet was this gross mustard yellow, stained in places, and the bed sheets looked like they'd seen better days. This is cozy, Sarah said, dropping her bag with a thud. Emily flopped onto one bed. At least it's central. We can hit the pubs tonight. Being the only guy, and one who'd roughed it in hostels before, I volunteered to sleep on the floor. You 2 take the beds. I'm fine with my sleeping bag between them. They protested at first. No way, we'll rotate, Emily insisted, but I waved them off. Come on, I'm used to it. Plus, you both get carsick on trains. You need the rest. We laughed about it, unpacking our stuff and planning our night out. That evening, we wandered Soho, grabbing fish and chips and sneaking into a dive bar where some local band was playing. To old friends and new adventures, Sarah toasted with her pint. We shared stories. Sarah about her Spanish fling, Emily about quitting her soul-sucking office job, me about getting lost in the Louvre. I swear I almost cried when I couldn't find the exit, I admitted. You're such a drama queen, Emily teased, but her eyes were soft. By midnight, we stumbled back to the hotel, buzzed and happy. I unrolled my sleeping bag on the floor, the carpet scratchy under my hands. Night, ladies, I mumbled, crashing hard. The girls giggled for a bit before dozing off. The next morning, all hell broke loose. I woke up to Sarah shrieking. Oh my god, what the fuck are these? She was scratching her arms furiously, red welts popping up everywhere. Emily sat up, bleary-eyed, then started itching too. She pulled back her sheet, and there they were. Tiny black bugs crawling on the mattress. Bed bugs. Dozens of them. Fat from feeding all night. Holy shit, I said, jumping up. My sleeping bag was clear. No bites, no bugs. But the girls, covered. Sarah had them on her neck, arms, even her legs. Emily's back was a mess of angry red bites. This is disgusting! I feel like they're crawling in my hair! Sarah wailed, stripping the bed. We inspected everything. The mattresses were infested, seams bursting with eggs and bugs. How did you dodge this? Emily asked me, half laughing, half crying, as she scratched. Lucky floor sleeper, I guess, I replied, but I felt awful. We stormed down to the front desk. Your room's crawling with bed bugs. We want our money back. I demanded. The clerk shrugged.
Not my problem. You signed the waiver.
Sarah lost it.
Waiver? We didn't sign shit about bugs eating us alive.
We argued for 20 minutes, but he wouldn't budge. Finally, Emily pulled out her phone. Fine. We'll blast this on TripAdvisor and call the health department. He grumbled and refunded half. We grabbed our stuff, itching like crazy. The girls, anyway. I helped them bag everything in plastic from a nearby store. Seal it tight. We can't let these hitchhike, I said. We found a laundromat and washed our clothes on hot, and then crashed at a pricier hostel with actual reviews. For days, the bites plagued them. Sarah's swelled up bad. She slathered on cream from a pharmacy. I look like I have chicken pox, she moaned over tea in a cafe. Emily photographed the welts for memories. This is what travel's about, right? The horror stories, she said with a wry smile. I was on a road trip with my best friend, Mia. We were somewhere deep in Texas, that stretch of nowhere between El Paso and Austin. Dusty skies, endless roads, and a motel with 3 working lights on its sign that just read, Hotel. But it had decent reviews in our old guidebook, and for $50 a night, we weren't going to be picky. We checked in around 7 p.m. The owner, short guy, bald patch, oily skin, barely looked up from his TV. The place was run down, but clean enough. Faded carpet, musty smell. One of those rooms that feels like it's trapped in a year that doesn't exist anymore. We didn't unpack much, just showered, ate cold sandwiches, and climbed into bed. I must have drifted off sometime after midnight. The knock on the door came sharp and fast. I jolted up. Mia stirred, still half asleep. Who the hell? Another knock, then a voice.
Hey, this is management. You need to leave. Now.
I opened the door chain and peered out. It was the same guy who checked us in. He wasn't holding anything. No clipboard, no phone. Just standing there, sweating.
You gotta go. I need the room for someone else,
he said, eyes darting past me into the room. Are you serious? I asked.
Dead serious. Got someone waiting. They're paying more.
Mia stepped beside me. His eyes were locked like a magnet. She crossed her arms, suddenly alert.
This is bullshit, she snapped. We already paid.
You'll get a refund,
he snapped. No, I said firmly, stepping in front of Mia. We're not leaving in the middle of the night. He stared at us for a moment, chewing the inside of his cheek, then muttered, Fine, and stormed off. Or so we thought. 5 minutes later, he was back, loud knocking. This time he was yelling.
You think I don't know what kind of girl she is?
He shouted.
You think I can't tell?
Mia pushed me aside and stormed out before I could stop her.
Say that again,
she yelled. I grabbed my phone and wallet, ready to get the hell out if I had to. But when I looked through the curtain, that's when I saw them. 3 men. Huge. One had a beard down to his chest. They looked like they'd stepped out of an old gang movie. Leather vests, boots, tattoos that didn't stop. They were on the owner in seconds.
She's paid to be here,
the tallest one barked.
You're gonna let her stay tonight.
Another one shoved the guy against the railing.
We don't want to ever hear shit like this from you again. Oh, I don't want any trouble,
the owner whimpered.
You already got it.
I stood frozen at the window, heart racing. Mia slipped back inside and locked the door. Her breathing was fast. She didn't say anything, just sat on the bed. A few minutes later, it was dead quiet. I peered out again. The men were gone. The owner, too. I don't know what the hell just happened, I whispered. Mia stared at the door. Me neither. We didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, everything looked normal. The front desk guy, the same one, acted like nothing had happened. Handed us our receipt with a smile. Hope you had a pleasant stay, he said. I stared at him for a second. Seriously? He blinked. Something wrong? No, nothing. To be honest, we weren't able to sleep very well because we were so shook up, but it was better than getting in the car again. Thank you, anonymous biker gang. I remember that trip like it was yesterday, even though it's been a few years now. I was a junior in college, studying environmental science, and our class had planned this 2-week field study in northern Florida. We were supposed to be tromping through the swamps, identifying birds and plants, learning about ecosystems. Instead, it turned into something out of a nightmare. We couldn't afford fancy hotels on our budget, so our professor booked this big old Airbnb on the outskirts of Tallahassee. A sprawling ranch-style house with enough rooms for all 15 of us students, plus the instructors. The listing looked okay online. Cozy retreat for groups, hosted by friendly couple. Yeah, right. From the moment we pulled up in our rented vans, something felt off. The place was tucked way back on a dirt road, overgrown with Spanish moss hanging like creepy curtains from the oaks. The hosts, Mark and Linda, greeted us at the door. Mark was this burly guy in his 50s, with a faded tattoo peeking out from his shirt collar, and eyes that didn't quite meet yours. Linda was thinner, all smiles, but her laugh sounded forced, like she was reading from a script.
Welcome, y'all. We got fresh towels inside, but you'll have to ask if you need extras, she said,
handing over a single key ring with a bunch of identical keys.
These work on all the doors. Makes it easier for big groups like yours.
I shared a room with 2 other girls, Sarah and Mia. We were all excited at first, unpacking our bug spray and notebooks. But that night, things got weird. Sarah tried her key on what she thought was our bathroom door, but it opened into another student's room.
"Oh my god, sorry!"
she yelped, slamming it shut as the guys inside laughed it off. Happened a couple more times. People wandering in accidentally thinking it was their space.
"This is so sketchy,"
Mia whispered to me as we settled in.
"Why don't they have proper locks?"
The hosts hung around a lot, which was unusual for an Airbnb. Mark would pop in unannounced to check the AC. And Linda kept offering us these homemade cookies that tasted like they'd been sitting out for days.
"You girls be careful out there in the woods,"
she'd say with that fake smile.
"Lots of critters and people who might not be so friendly."
I brushed it off as Southern hospitality gone overboard, but it gave me the creeps. Our days were packed with fieldwork, so we crashed early most nights. But on the 4th night, around 1 a.m., I bolted awake to the sound of pounding. It was coming from the wall next to my bed, the thin partition separating our room from the one the host said was off limits for storage. At first, I thought it was a dream, but then the screams started. A woman's voice, raw and terrified.
"Help! He's going to kill me! Please, dear God, help me!"
Sarah sat up, her eyes wide in the dark. "What the hell is that?" Mia was already fumbling for her phone. "It's coming from next door! Oh my god, listen!" The woman kept screaming, words tumbling out in gasps.
"No, please, don't!"
Then a thud, like something heavy hitting the floor, followed by a wet, squelching noise that made my stomach turn. It sounded like flesh being torn. The screams cut off abruptly, replaced by heavy breathing and dragging sounds. We have to call 911, I said, my voice shaking as I grabbed my own phone. My fingers were numb. I could barely dial. "Hello? Yes, there's a woman screaming in the room next to us. She said someone's killing her. Please, hurry!" Our instructors, Mr. Jenkins and Ms. Patel, burst into our room minutes later, wrapped in robes, faces pale. "Everyone out! Get to the living room!" Mr. Jenkins barked. We huddled there, whispering frantically. "Did you hear that squelch?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. It sounded like blood. The police arrived in about 20 minutes, 2 squad cars with lights flashing but no sirens. Mark and Linda were there too, suddenly appearing from their attached cottage. "What's all this commotion?" Mark asked, his tone too casual, like we'd woken him over a noisy party. The cops went straight to the storage room. We waited outside, shivering in the humid night air. One officer came out, looking grim. "Room's empty," he said to his partner, loud enough for us to hear. "But there's blood everywhere. Splattered on the walls, pooled on the floor. Drag marks leading to the back door, like something was hauled out." Ms. Patel gasped. "Was there a woman in there? Another guest?" The cop shook his head. "No sign of anyone now, but this looks bad. We're going to need statements from all of you." They roused the whole class, shining flashlights in faces, asking questions. "Did you see anyone else here besides the hosts?" one asked me. I told them about the screams, the pounding. Mark hovered nearby, arms crossed. "It must be some prank," he muttered. "Kids these days." Linda chimed in, her voice sugary.
We've had no other guests. That room's just for our stuff. Maybe an animal got in?
But I wasn't buying it. As the police taped off the area, I noticed Linda's hands reddened, like she'd scrubbed them raw. And Mark's truck was parked funny, backed up to the house with the tailgate down. My mind raced. What if they were involved? Serial killers preying on travelers. I'd read stories like that on Reddit, about hosts who lure people in. We didn't stay. Mr. Jenkins herded us into the vans and we drove to a chain hotel in town, paying extra out of pocket. "This trip's cursed," Mia said in the back seat, her head on my shoulder. "I just want to go home." The next day, the police called our instructors back for more questions. Turns out, the blood was human. Type O positive. Fresh. No body, but they found a woman's purse hidden under the floorboards in that room. Inside, ID for a 28-year-old named Emily Carter, a solo traveler who had booked the Airbnb separately through some off-app deal. She checked in the day before us, but no one had seen her. That's when the twist hit. While we were out in the field that afternoon, I got a frantic call from Sarah. "Turn on the news! The host! They're wanted!" I pulled over the van and we all crowded around my phone. Local station reporting Mark and Linda weren't just shady, they were fugitives. Real names? Harlan and Rita Sykes, suspected in a string of disappearances across the South. They'd been running Airbnbs under aliases, targeting young women, luring them with cheap rates, and then, well, the details were gruesome. Harlan would assault them. Rita would help cover it up. They sold organs on the black market, or so the rumors went. Emily had been their latest victim, screaming for help right next to us. But here's the plot twist that still chills me. One of our classmates, a quiet girl named Becca, had gone missing that morning. We'd thought she was just sleeping in, but her stuff was gone. Police found her phone in Mark's truck. Turns out Linda had slipped her a cookie the night before, planning to grab her next. Becca had woken up disoriented, overheard the hosts arguing about the next one, and snuck out to hide in the woods. She flagged down a passerby and called the cops herself. The satisfying part? They caught Rita that night trying to flee in their truck. Harlan resisted, got tased. Rita broke down crying, spilling everything. Emily's body was found buried shallow in the backyard, stabbed multiple times. Her screams the last thing she managed before he finished her. Becca was safe, though traumatized. The class? We cut the trip short, flew home early. Our professor apologized 1,000,000 times. "I should have vetted them better." This story has been loosely inspired from a real story shared by one of our subscribers. This is what she said. "On a college trip in North Florida, we stayed at a sketchy inn. Towels required a front desk request, and keycards weren't room-specific, leading to strangers accidentally entering our rooms. Around 1 to 2 a.m., a woman's screams of, 'He's going to kill me,' and 'God help,' woke us, followed by a sickening squelch and silence. We called 911 and alerted our instructors, then fled to their room. Police found the neighboring room empty. with blood and drag marks to the door. Our group was evacuated and relocated to another hotel for the week. I've avoided shady inns ever since. I remember that trip like it was yesterday, even though it's been a couple of years now. I was 28, fresh out of a messy breakup with my ex, Jason, who thought it was a great idea to cheat on me with his coworker. You know the type, charming until they're not. Anyway, I needed to get away, clear my head. So I booked a solo road trip up the California coast. Nothing fancy. Just me, my beat-up Honda Civic, and a playlist full of Taylor Swift anthems to scream-sing along to. I figured stopping at quirky B&Bs along the way would add some adventure, make me feel independent and alive again. The place I ended up that night was in this tiny town called Mendocino, right on the edge of the Pacific. The owner, a sweet older lady named Mrs. Hargrove, greeted me at the door with a warm hug like we'd known each other forever. "Oh, honey, you look like you could use a good night's rest," she said, her voice all soft and southern, even though we were in NorCal. "The shared bathroom's down the hall, but don't worry, everyone's real respectful here." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Thanks, Mrs. Hargrove. I'm just beat from the drive. Any other guests tonight?" She tilted her head, counting on her fingers. "Well, there's Mr. Thompson in room 3. He's a writer. Keeps to himself. And then there's that nice young couple in room 5 on their honeymoon. Oh, and a performer fella in room 2. He's a bit eccentric, but harmless." She winked. "Artists, you know?" I laughed it off. Ha! As long as no one's blasting music at midnight, I'm good. I hauled my suitcase up the stairs, unpacked a bit, and crashed early. The bed was comfy, with those feather pillows that swallow your head, and the ocean waves crashing outside lulled me right to sleep. But around 2 a.m., nature called. And not in a polite way. I was bursting for a pee, the kind where you wake up in a panic, convinced you're about to embarrass yourself. The hallway light was dim, just a nightlight plugged into the wall, casting long shadows on the faded carpet. I shuffled down in my oversized t-shirt and yoga pants, yawning, my eyes half shut. The bathroom door was cracked open a sliver. No light on inside, so I figured it was empty. I pushed it open without knocking. Big mistake. There he was, this guy, squatting in the middle of the bathroom floor, fully dressed in a mime costume. Black and white striped shirt, black pants, white gloves, the whole deal. His face was painted stark white, with exaggerated black lips and those creepy arched eyebrows. He wasn't on the toilet. He was just hunched down like he was about to, well, you know. But his trousers were still up, zipped and everything. No sign of anything happening down there, but he was pushing, silently straining, his face all contorted in this weird, exaggerated mime expression. I froze. "What the?" I whispered, my voice cracking. He looked up, locked eyes with me, and waved. Like a cheerful little wave, fingers wiggling, with this big, silent smile plastered on his painted face. Then he just kept pushing. No sound, no words, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Oh my God," I muttered, backing up. I didn't wait for more. I spun around, bolted back to my room, slammed the door, and locked it. Peeing in a bottle? Yeah, that's what I did. Grabbed an empty water bottle from my bag, squatted over it in the corner like some feral animal, praying I wouldn't miss. It was humiliating, but better than whatever the hell was going on in that bathroom. The next morning, I woke up groggy, convinced it was a dream. Had to be, right? I mean, who squats in a mime outfit at 2 a.m.? But the bottle was there on the nightstand, a gross reminder. I dumped it in the sink. My room had a tiny one, thank God, and headed downstairs for breakfast, determined to act normal. Mrs. Hargrove was in the kitchen flipping pancakes. "Morning, dear. Sleep well?" I hesitated, pouring coffee. Yeah, mostly. "Hey, that performer guy you mentioned, what's his deal? Is he like a street artist or something?" She chuckled, sliding a plate my way. "Oh, Marcel? He's a mime performer. Travels around doing shows. Sweet as pie, but yeah, a tad odd. Why do you ask?" I poked at my food. No reason. Just curious. I didn't want to sound crazy, so I kept it vague. The honeymoon couple joined us then, Emily and Tom from Seattle. They were all lovey-dovey, holding hands under the table.
This place is so charming, Emily gushed. We heard the ocean all night.
Did you sleep okay? I forced a laugh. Sort of. Woke up needing the bathroom and ran into something weird. Tom raised an eyebrow. Weird? How? Before I could answer, the door creaked open, and in walked Marcel. No mime get up this time, just jeans and a hoodie, his face scrubbed clean. He looked totally normal, mid-30s with a shy smile.
Morning, everyone,
he said softly, French accent faint, but there. Mrs. Hargrove beamed.
Marcel, join us. This is Josie from L.A.
He nodded at me.
Pleasure.
But his eyes lingered a second too long, like he knew. Breakfast dragged on with small talk. Emily chatted about their wedding.
It was on a beach, so romantic.
And Tom asked about my trip. Solo traveling? Brave. I'd get lonely. I shrugged. It's empowering. After a breakup, you know? Needed space. Marcel stayed quiet mostly, but then he turned to me.
You are from Los Angeles? I perform there sometimes. Mimes are not so popular anymore, but I try.
Yeah? What kind of shows? He smiled faintly.
Silent stories. Invisible walls. Trapped in boxes. People laugh, but it's deeper. About feeling confined.
The way he said it sent a chill up my spine. Was he hinting, or was I paranoid? After breakfast, I cornered Mrs. Hargrove in the hall. Listen, last night, I think I saw Marcel in the bathroom, dressed as a mime. It was bizarre. Her face paled a bit.
Oh, honey, Marcel's harmless, but he has his quirks. Insomnia, you see. Sometimes he practices at night. Says the silence helps.
Practices? Squatting on the floor? She sighed.
He's had a rough past. Lost his family young in France. Performs to cope. Maybe it caught him in a routine. I'm sorry if it scared you.
I nodded, but it didn't sit right. Later, I bumped into Marcel outside, smoking a cigarette by the garden. Hey, I said, about last night. He exhaled smoke slowly.
You saw me.
Yeah. What the hell was that? He looked away toward the ocean.
It was a performance for myself. I cannot sleep sometimes. The mime helps me release. No words, just action. I did not mean to frighten you.
Release what? You were pushing
Like I was trapped,
he interrupted gently.
In my head. It's therapy. The costume makes it real.
I stared. Therapy? In a shared bathroom. He shrugged.
The house is quiet at night. I forget others are here.
Then he smiled that same silent smile from before.
Forgive me?
I muttered, sure, and walked away. But my mind raced. Was he lying, or was it really that innocent? That afternoon, I explored the town. Cute shops, cliffs overlooking the sea. Emily and Tom invited me for coffee. So, spill about that weird thing last night, Emily said, leaning in. I told them everything, whispering like it was a ghost story. Tom laughed. Ha! Dude sounds nuts. Mime therapy? Come on. Emily frowned. That's kind of sad, though. If he's dealing with trauma, and I had a friend who did weird stuff after her dad died. Art heals, right? Yeah, maybe, I said, but doubt nagged at me. Back at the B&B, Mr. Thompson, the writer, finally emerged. Gray hair, glasses, carrying a notebook. We chatted in the parlor.
Heard you're curious about Marcel,
he said, voice gravelly. Word travels fast. He chuckled. Ha!
Small house. Marcel's a character. Been coming here for years. Mrs. Hargrove says he's like a son. But between you and me, I've seen him wandering at night. Once he was in the garden, miming a whole conversation with nobody.
My stomach twisted. Creepy.
Or creative,
Thomas replied.
Writers do weird shit too. Inspiration strikes odd hours.
Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hall. Heart pounding, I cracked my door. There was Marcel, in normal clothes, heading downstairs. I followed quietly, peeking into the living room. He was sitting by the window, staring at the moon. No costume, just still. Like he was miming peace. I slipped back to bed, relieved but unsettled. Maybe it was nothing. The next morning, I packed to leave. Mrs. Hargrove hugged me goodbye.
Safe travels, dear. And don't worry about Marcel. He's just a lost soul finding his way.
Marcel waved from the porch. Au revoir, Josie. Perhaps our paths cross again. I drove off, the ocean in my rear view, but the image stuck with me. Weeks later, back in LA, I Googled him. Marcel the Mime. Turns out, he was semi-famous in Europe. Lost his wife in a car accident years ago. Articles mentioned his eccentric coping mechanisms. Night rituals in order to mime away the pain. It hit me then. He wasn't pooping or anything gross. He was miming release, pushing out invisible demons. Therapy in stripes. Her name was Dana. We dated for 9 months. When it ended, she didn't move out, just drifted upstairs, took the guest bedroom, and stayed. She cried, said she had nowhere else to go. I believed her. That was my first mistake. Over the next few years, years, she nested up there like a raccoon with a meth problem. The upstairs became her territory. I never went up unless I absolutely had to. She had her own bedroom, bathroom, and a door that stayed shut like a warning sign. She brought in a rabbit, a fat gray lop named Smokey. I didn't mind at first. I even liked rabbits. But it didn't take long before I realized Smokey was more of a prop than a pet. When she went home to Arizona for Christmas, she asked me to check on him. No problem, I said. A week of food and water duty, easy. What I walked into was something else entirely. The upstairs looked like a condemned squat. Food wrappers, stacks of dishes, half-empty energy drinks lined up like a cracked-out soldier's memorial. The bathroom smelled like rotting cosmetics and wet towels. The floor stuck to my shoes. Smokey's cage was small, too small, and overflowing with weeks of piss-soaked pellets and hardened droppings. His nails curled under like claws. I stood there frozen, the stench closing in around me. And yet, I cleaned. I built a bigger cage. I gave that little guy clean water, fresh lettuce, a soft towel to lie on. I didn't even tell her what I saw. That was mistake number 2. When she got back, I told her, calmly, that I'd cleaned up, that it couldn't happen again. She nodded, fake tears, soft voice. Of course, thank you, I love him so much. Bullshit, but I swallowed it. Months passed. Smokey got sick. One day, he was just gone. I offered to help take the cage down, but she brushed it off. I found the cage still upstairs 2 weeks later, full of dried rabbit shit. Then the bugs came. It started with a few ants in the kitchen. Then roaches. Big, slick ones that scattered when the light came on. I deep cleaned, sprayed. Nothing worked. A week later, I caught a whiff of something. Dead. Now my first thought was attic animal. Mouse, maybe a squirrel. So I checked the attic from the hallway. Nothing. The second attic entrance was through Dana's closet. I hadn't been in that room since Smokey died. When I opened the door, the smell hit like a slap. Decay and sweat and something sour. The floor was layered in filth. Blackened banana peels, mounds of clothes and underwear. Men's, not mine. Fast food wrappers with dried ketchup stuck to the walls. Sticky carpet. Bugs crawling through a half-eaten Big Mac. And in the corner, the rabbit cage. Still filled. Still reeking. I saw red. She came home later that night, tried to brush past me. You need to clean your damn room, I said, voice steady. She rolled her eyes. It's not that bad. It's a health hazard. Jesus, you sound like my dad. You need to clean it. Tonight. She didn't. And I, being the fool I am, waited. A few weeks later, I had to change the AC filter. I went back up. It was worse. New trash on top of the old. Mold on the carpet. The cage still there, growing some kind of white fuzz on the corners. I snapped. You're out, I told her when she walked in. By Friday, the sob story came quick. No money, bad childhood, nowhere to go. She cried, said she'd change. I didn't care, but Dana was petty. The day she moved out, I came home to find my bedroom door wide open. That door had been locked. She'd picked it, or maybe I forgot. Either way, she'd been in there. She left behind a surprise. Used feminine hygiene products, fast food bags, one of her dirty thongs tossed on my pillow like some final insult, and a handful of dead bugs smashed under a frying pan on my desk. I wanted to burn the house down. Instead, I deep cleaned, I fumigated, I ripped out the upstairs carpet and repainted the walls because the stains wouldn't come out. They'd soaked into the drywall. I found mold behind her dresser, and something worse in her closet. 3 syringes in a shoebox, used, uncapped. I reported that to the police. I didn't know what she was using. They didn't ask much. I thought it was over, but then the mail came. Credit card offers. In my name. For accounts I never opened. Turns out Dana had done more than just leave trash behind. I don't know when, maybe while I was working late, maybe the day she moved out, but she'd gotten hold of my social security number. I kept a lockbox in my closet with all my documents. I'd never noticed it had been opened. Maybe I didn't want to. A week later, I got a call from a payday loan office in Kentucky. I'd never been to Kentucky. I froze my credit, reported identity theft. My credit dropped 120 points in 2 months. She'd taken out 2 store cards and tried to purchase a laptop under my name. I drove to her new place once. I wanted answers. I wanted revenge. But when I got there, I sat in the car and stared at the apartment building for an hour. A cracked screen door, yellowing blinds, kids screaming in the parking lot. I never went in. I just drove home. Sometimes I still dream about the upstairs, about the rabbit, about her laughing while she locked my bedroom door behind her. I wake up sweating. People tell me I should have known better. They're right. I'd been craving a weekend away from the chaos of my Seattle desk job, so when my friend Jess suggested a girls' trip to a quaint bed and breakfast in the middle of nowhere, Washington, I jumped at the chance. The Shady Haven B&B had glowing reviews online. Cozy, charming, run by a young couple named Leela and Ethan, who looked like they'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. The photos showed pristine rooms with plush bedding and rustic decor, all nestled in a forested valley. Seemed like the perfect escape. Jess and I booked a 3-night stay, expecting a relaxing retreat. We couldn't have been more wrong. The drive to Shady Haven was long, winding through dense pine forests and past crumbling barns. When we arrived, the house was stunning. Leela greeted us at the door, her blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail, her smile almost too perfect. Ethan stood behind her, all chiseled jaw and piercing blue eyes, offering a firm handshake. They were both in their late 20s, fit and polished in a way that made me feel a little self-conscious in my yoga pants and hoodie.
Welcome, ladies,
Leela chirped, her voice syrupy sweet.
We're so thrilled to have you. Let's get you settled.
She led us inside where the air smelled of lavender and cedar. The interior was as gorgeous as the photos. Polished hardwood floors, vintage furniture, and fresh flowers on every surface. But as we followed her up the creaking stairs, I noticed small signs taped to nearly everything. Do not touch the vase. Do not move the chair. Do not open this drawer. It was odd, but I brushed it off. Some people are just particular about their stuff, right? Our room was a dream, with a massive 4-poster bed and a window overlooking the forest. But there was another sign on the nightstand. No food or drink in rooms. Violators will be charged. Jess raised an eyebrow.
This place is giving me control freak vibes,
she whispered. I laughed, but an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. That first night, Leela explained the house rules over dinner. A gourmet spread of roasted vegetables and grilled salmon that almost made up for the weirdness.
Showers are by request only,
she said, her eyes scanning us like she was sizing us up.
Water's limited out here, so just let us know. Oh, and the Wi-Fi shuts off at 11 p.m. We like to keep things peaceful.
Ethan nodded, his gaze lingering on Jess a little too long. "We check the halls at night to make sure everyone's comfortable," he added. "Safety first." "Check the halls?" Jess asked, her fork pausing midair. "Like, what, you're making sure we're asleep?" Leela laughed, a high, tinkling sound.
Oh, no, just ensuring no one's sneaking around or using the internet after hours. We've had issues with guests before.
The word issues hung in the air, but none of us pressed it. After dinner, we retreated to our room, where Jess tried to connect to the Wi-Fi at 10:55 p.m. "It's still on," she said, scrolling through her phone. "Let's see how strict they are." At exactly 11 o'clock, the connection dropped. We heard footsteps in the hallway moments later, slow and deliberate. I peeked through the door's peephole and saw Leela's silhouette gliding past, her head turning as if listening for something. My skin prickled. The next morning, we met another guest, a guy named Ryan, in his early 30s, traveling alone. He was friendly, with a scruffy beard and a backpacker vibe. Over coffee, he told us he'd been staying at Shady Haven for a week, working on a novel. "This place is weird as hell," he said quietly, glancing toward the kitchen where Leela was chopping fruit. "Last night, I heard Ethan in my room. I woke up and he was just standing there, staring. Said he was checking the windows. At 2 a.m.? "That's creepy," I said, my voice low. "Why are you still here?" Ryan shrugged. "It's isolated, cheap, and I need the quiet to write. But yeah, I'm out tomorrow." That day, we explored the nearby trails, but the rules followed us even outside. Ethan caught us taking photos near a pond and snapped, "No pictures of the property!" His tone was sharp, nothing like the charming host from the night before. When we returned, Leela was waiting, her arms crossed. "You didn't ask to use the shower," she said, her smile gone. "There's a $50 fee for that." "For a shower?" Jess scoffed. "You've got to be kidding." "It's in the fine print," Leela said coldly. "Pay up or we'll add it to your final bill." We paid, but the whole thing felt like a shakedown. That night, the footsteps came again, heavier this time. I woke up to see the doorknob jiggle slightly, but no one entered. Jess whispered, "I'm freaking out. This place isn't right." By the third day, we were ready to leave. Ryan was checking out too. But when we went downstairs at 9:45 a.m., we found him standing outside in a torrential downpour, his bags at his feet. Leela stood at the door, arms folded. "Checkout's at 10 sharp," she said. "No exceptions." "It's a thunderstorm," I protested. "You're making him stand out there?" "He should have planned better," Leela said, her voice flat. "Taxi's on its way." Ryan looked furious but didn't argue. As we packed, another guest, an older woman named Carol, rushed into the foyer, her face pale. "They took my bags," she cried. "I went to town to get cash for the bill, and now they won't give them back." Ethan appeared, holding a duffel bag. "You'll get it when you pay," he said, his tone menacing. "No one leaves without settling up." I exchanged a look with Jess. This wasn't just bad hospitality, this felt like extortion. When it was our turn to check out, Leela stormed into our room without knocking. "It smells awful in here," she said, wrinkling her nose. She flung open the window, letting in a gust of damp air. "You've been eating in here, haven't you? That's another fee. Pay now." "We didn't eat anything," Jess snapped. "This is ridiculous." Leela's eyes narrowed. "Cash or card? Now." We paid, if only to get out of there. As we handed over the money, Leela's demeanor shifted back to saccharine. "Did you enjoy your stay?" she asked, smiling like nothing had happened. "Yeah, it was a nightmare," I muttered, grabbing my bag. That's when we noticed Ryan was gone. His taxi had come and gone, but his backpack was still by the door. "Where's Ryan?" I asked. Leela's smile didn't waver.
He left. Said he was in a hurry.
Something about her tone made my stomach twist. We loaded our car and drove away, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. A week later, I saw the news article online. Missing hiker in Washington State. Ryan's face stared back at me. He'd never made it to his next destination. I called the police, sharing everything. The rules, the fees, the nighttime checks, Ethan's creepy behavior. They investigated, and what they found was chilling. Leela and Ethan had been running a scam, overcharging guests and holding their belongings hostage. But it went deeper. Ryan's backpack, found in a shed behind the B&B, contained a hidden pocket with cash and a flash drive. The drive had photos of Leela and Ethan with stacks of money and what looked like stolen IDs from other guests. The police suspected they'd been targeting solo travelers, robbing them, and worse. Ryan wasn't the first to disappear. The plot twist came when they arrested Leela. Ethan had vanished, leaving her to take the fall. She claimed he'd been the mastermind, but evidence showed that she'd been luring guests with fake reviews. Knowing their isolated location made it easy to control them. Ryan's body was later found in the forest, his death ruled a homicide. The police believed Ethan had killed him after Ryan confronted them about the scam. This story has been inspired from a real-life story shared by one of our subscribers. This is what they said. During our stay at a Scottish island B&B run by a couple, the rooms were stunning but covered with do not touch signs. Shower use required permission and Wi-Fi cut off at 11 p.m. The hostess patrolled the halls at night, checking if guests were asleep and not using the internet. Upon checkout, she entered our room, complained we quote-unquote smelled, flung open a window, and demanded immediate payment. Another guest was evicted at 10 a.m. sharp and forced to wait in a thunderstorm for their taxi. One traveler had to fetch a check from a remote location to pay, only for the hostess to hold their bags hostage. Yet, as we left, she cheerfully asked if we enjoyed our stay. We were two broke guys in our early 20s, backpacking across Europe like we had something to prove. Couch surfing was our ticket. Cheap, spontaneous, and always interesting. Usually it meant a bunk bed, bad lighting, and long talks with some hipster hosting for karma points. But this one was different. Her name was Lisette. 50, maybe a few years older, but carried herself like she had no intention of ever being invisible. She opened the door with a cordless phone pressed to her ear. She held up a finger and mouthed, "Come in." I glanced at Kevin. He raised his brows, half smirked. We stepped in. The house smelled like cinnamon and something else. Perfume, maybe. Expensive. The living room was modern. Clean. Too clean. Like no one really lived in it. She ended the call with a flirty, "I love you, baby," and then turned her attention to us.
"Welcome, boys. Sorry about that. That was my boyfriend."
"Well, one of them," she said, grinning as she locked the door behind us. I laughed awkwardly. Kevin, always the smooth one, just nodded.
"I like to keep things exciting,"
she continued, walking ahead of us, hips swaying just enough to be noticeable.
"I hope you don't mind staying with a sugar mommy. I take good care of my boys."
That phrase hung in the air like a bad smell. She turned sharply. "You're both cute," she said, giving Kevin a little once-over.
"You sure you're just here for a place to crash?"
Yeah, I said, stepping in. "We've been traveling non-stop. Just need a roof and some sleep." She murmured. "I'm sure." She led us to the kitchen, then poured us wine without asking. We politely declined, but she kept sipping from her own glass like it was water. Then came the photos. Lisette pulled out her phone and started showing us picture after picture of her boys. They all looked like they were in their 20s. Tan, gym bodies, chiseled jaws, taken in places like Bali, Dubai, Paris. One guy had a collar on. Another had his head in her lap. Kevin tried to laugh it off. "They your sons?" he joked.
"Oh, honey," she purred. "They call me mommy, but not the way you're thinking."
She swiped again. and something weird happened. One image, a close-up of a passport. Not a selfie, a full scan of a passport page with some guy's details. The name was American. The photo looked familiar. One of the same guys she just showed. I caught Kevin's eye. That was the moment it stopped being funny. I didn't mean to show you that, she said, quickly backing out of the image. Some of them live far away. It's easier if I manage their documents. Cool, I said, flatly. We're actually pretty beat from the train ride. Mind if we head to the room? Oh, I'll take you myself, she said. Kevin froze. She walked us to the guest room. No windows, but a clean double bed. She pointed to the bathroom, then leaned on the doorframe. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. Bacon, eggs, maybe a little something sweet, she said, running her tongue over her bottom lip. Kevin gave her a thumbs up, like he was in a cartoon. She finally walked off. We shut the door. Dude, I whispered. We're leaving now. It's midnight, Kevin replied. If we bolt, she'll hear. And did you see the deadbolt on the front door? From inside only. She locked it. I paced the room. You saw that passport thing, right? Yeah. And those guys, they look like us. I don't think she's just a cougar with bad boundaries. She's got something going on, and I don't want to find out what. We agreed to sleep in shifts. One person on the bed, the other in the chair, wedged against the door. No one said the word pimp or blackmail, but both of us were thinking it. I let Kevin sleep first. He snored within minutes. I sat upright, wide-eyed, watching the doorknob like it might twist. At around 3 a.m., I heard soft steps outside the room. They paused. No knock, just breathing. I tensed up, heart pounding. The handle jiggled gently. I cleared my throat loudly, like a warning. The breathing stopped. Then, footsteps again, fading down the hallway. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I woke Kevin and we packed in silence. The floorboards creaked like they were trying to alert her. The kitchen was empty, but her wine glass was still on the counter, lipstick mark fresh. We unlocked the door and walked out as quietly as we could. Just as we stepped off the porch, we heard her voice behind us. No goodbye? She asked from an upstairs window, her hair wrapped in a towel. Kevin gave her a wave without turning around. Thanks for hosting, he muttered. We power walked to the end of the street before bursting into nervous laughter. What the fuck was that? I asked. Dude, I think we almost got trafficked. Or murdered, or seduced, or all three. The whole experience was totally weird. This story is inspired from a real-life incident which happened with one of our subscribers. This is what he said. A few years back, my friend and I tried couch surfing. We're both big guys, so we usually feel safe. We arrived at this older guy's place, maybe in his 60s. He opened the door, still on a call, ends it with, I love you, and then welcomes us and says it was his girlfriend overseas. He starts bragging about having multiple girlfriends and shows us pictures. At one point, he even showed a passport pic by accident. It felt off. We said we were tired, and he led us to the room, rubbing his belly and saying he'd cook breakfast. My friend slept against the door just in case. At sunrise, we packed up and left quietly. The whole experience gave us the creeps. Still does. The air in Yangon was thick, heavy with humidity and the faint tang of diesel from the streets below. My best friend, Sarah, and I had landed in Myanmar just hours ago, our backpacks still dusted with the grit of a 20-hour flight. We were 25, fresh out of grad school, chasing adventure on a budget. The hotel we found was a steal. $15 a night for a twin room in a city where even hostels could gouge you. The clerk, a wiry man with a nervous smile, mentioned something about maintenance on a few floors, but we didn't think much of it. Cheap was cheap. We crashed hard that night, jet-lagged and lulled by the hum of the ancient air conditioner. The next morning, we shuffled to the hotel's breakfast buffet. A modest spread of watery coffee, toast, and some unfamiliar fruit that looked like it had been sliced hours ago. Sarah, always the optimist, was already planning our day. Shwedagon Pagoda. Maybe a market. I was half listening, stirring sugar into my coffee, when a couple at the next table leaned over. "You two sleep okay?" the man asked, his German accent crisp. He was maybe 30, with a scruffy beard and tired eyes. His girlfriend, a petite woman with a messy bun, nodded at us, her face pale. "Yeah, fine," I said, glancing at Sarah. "Why?" They introduced themselves as Lucas and Anna, backpackers from Munich.
"We didn't sleep at all,"
Anna said, her voice low, almost a whisper.
"They woke us up at 3 a.m. to move us to another floor. No explanation, just banging on the door, telling us to grab our stuff."
"That's weird," Sarah said, frowning. "What floor were you on?"
"6th,"
Lucas replied.
"They moved us to the 4th. Said something about scheduled work. But it was chaotic. People running around, shouting in Burmese. We thought it was a fire or something."
I sipped my coffee, the unease creeping in. Our room was on the 5th floor, one below theirs. "Did they say what kind of work?" I asked. Anna shook her head.
"No, but it felt off. Like they were hiding something."
We didn't dwell on it. Yangon was new, vibrant, and we had temples to explore. But as we left the breakfast room, I noticed the clerk from last night whispering urgently to another staff member behind the desk. Their eyes flicked toward us, then away. I brushed it off. Cultural differences, maybe. Sarah and I spent the day wandering, snapping photos of golden stupas and dodging street vendors. By the time we got back to the hotel, we were exhausted, ready for another night of sleep. That's when we saw the police. 2 officers stood in the lobby, their uniforms wrinkled but official. A small crowd of guests had gathered, murmuring. Lucas and Anna were there, looking shaken. Sarah grabbed my arm. "What's going on?" she whispered. I approached Lucas. "Hey, what's this about?" His face was grim.
"You didn't hear? 2 people died last night. On our floor, the 6th.
My stomach dropped. "Died? How?"
"They're saying it was an accident,"
Anna cut in, her voice trembling.
"Something about the maintenance. They were gassing the room for bugs, pumping some kind of pesticide to the vents that are under the doors. The couple in the room next to ours, they didn't wake up."
Sarah's hand tightened on my arm. "Wait, what? They were gassing rooms while people were in them?" Lucas nodded.
"They weren't supposed to be. The hotel messed up, booked people on a floor they'd marked for maintenance. When they realized, they started moving everyone in the middle of the night. But they missed that couple. By the time they got to them, it was too late."
I felt sick. Our room was 1 floor below. If we'd been assigned to the 6th instead of the 5th? I pushed the thought away. "Who were they?" I asked.
"American couple,"
Anna said.
"Older, maybe in their 50s. On vacation, I heard."
The police were taking statements now, their voices calm but firm. The hotel manager, a sweaty man in a cheap suit, was gesturing wildly, trying to explain. I caught fragments of his words. Miscommunication, unfortunate error, not our fault. The guests around us were whispering, some angry, some scared. A woman in a floral dress was crying softly, her husband rubbing her back. Sarah pulled me aside.
"Jess, this is insane. We could have been on that floor. We could have..."
"Don't," I said, cutting her off. "We're fine. Let's just figure out what to do." But I couldn't shake the image. A nozzle slid under a door, gas hissing into a room where 2 people slept unaware. I kept seeing their faces. Strangers I'd never met, but Americans, like us. It felt personal, like a warning. That night we didn't sleep. We sat on our beds, doors locked, windows cracked open despite the heat. Sarah kept checking her phone, reading about pesticide poisoning. "It's not just bugs," she said, scrolling. "Some of these chemicals are heavy duty. They can kill you in minutes if you breathe enough." "Stop," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "You're freaking me out." "I'm freaking myself out," she shot back. "Jess, this wasn't a mistake. How do you forget people are in a room? How do you not check?" She was right. It didn't add up. The next morning we packed our bags. We weren't staying another night. At breakfast, Lucas and Anna found us again. "You're leaving?" Lucas asked. "Yeah," I said. "This place gives me the creeps now." Anna leaned in, her voice barely audible.
We talked to a maid. She said the hotel's been cutting corners for years. They use cheap pesticides, stuff banned in a lot of countries. And get this, they knew the 6th floor was booked. The manager told the maintenance crew to go ahead anyway, said it'd be fine.
My blood ran cold. "That's not an accident," I said. "That's criminal." Lucas nodded. "The police are investigating, but good luck. This place, money talks. They'll probably pay off whatever they need to." We checked out an hour later, our hearts pounding as we handed over our keys. The clerk avoided eye contact, his nervous smile gone. Outside, Yangon buzzed on, oblivious street vendors hawking noodles, monks in saffron robes gliding past. We found a new place to stay, a guest house run by a kind older woman who spoke broken English. That night, safe in our new room, Sarah and I talked it over. "We should do something," she said. "Those people, they had families. They deserve justice." I agreed, but what could we do? We were just two American girls, halfway across the world. This story has been inspired from a real-life incident shared by one of our subscribers. This is what they said. "In Yangon, Myanmar, we snagged a budget hotel upon arrival, discounted due to ongoing floor maintenance. We slept soundly and met some German guests at breakfast who had been abruptly relocated overnight. Turns out, their floor was slated for bug extermination via gas pumped under doors, killing 2 people in the adjacent room before staff realized the booking error. We were on a safe level, but the near miss has haunted me ever since."